Okay, so we are reading Far Journeys by Robert Monroe. We are on chapter 6, page number 71 of the book and page 41 of the PDF.
Who are the beings who know and use this technology? Some have admitted that they have never been in a human being in physical life existence. Others were here thousands of years ago. Some have been in physical life existence in other parts of the universe in non human form. Why are they interested in human life on Earth? Are there thousands of them, millions, billions? They apparently do have individuality of a sort. How did such a technology begin? Who developed it? Is there some restriction on our learning such technology and applying it here in time, space, Earth? Is this technology being applied constantly in other ways on Earth and in human affairs that we don't know about and certainly of which we are not consciously aware? We do seem to have one answer.
1 second. So, when Robert Monroe started going out of body, he actually encountered intelligence from other realities, other time and space continuums, other planetary systems, etc. They did not operate in the same paradigm as that the we as humans operate in, but they had a different context of operation. And all of us, many of us have had thousands and thousands of lifetimes in this planetary system, okay, the 3D reality that we so called. Also, there are many entities who've never experienced this reality but are still interested into as to what is happening in this particular reality.
We do seem
Bhaiya,
to
does
have
it
one.
mean, sorry,
Right?
can I ask you a question, Bhaiya?
Yeah,
Does it
please.
mean, is it only related to the Earth, or is it even the other planets also?
Other planets. So what we talk about is that when you're going into we spoke about the levels of
Miranon.
consciousness, right? Miranon levels of
Okay.
consciousness. So he said that from 1 to 7 is plant life, from 7 to
Is
14
animal.
is animal life, from 14 to 21 is basically human
Uh-huh.
life,
Uh,
right? Now, once you transcend that, then you're going into other
okay.
consciousnesses and you're going into the spiritual consciousness. Now, once you cross 49, you're going into a totally different group of levels. So now the institute goes in the last program in the cycle. It's called Starline's Reunion, and that program goes up to Focus 52. So you're going into alternate realities when you're going into the Starline programs. So that is what he's really talking about here. Now, naturally, he did it himself,
Mm.
right? He did not have technology support and all that stuff so much there. He did it himself, and then when the explorers started going, they also started encountering these intelligent species, and they were coming from all over the place in all shapes and sizes. Let me tell you. Okay, they come in all shapes and sizes. They don't come in a human form every time.
Thank you.
We do seem to have one answer. In all of our contacts and communication, the application of this technology seems totally benevolent. There also seems to be rules and restrictions in regard to its use.
So, again, as I keep mentioning, that when we are going into these higher states of consciousness, the energies that we encounter there are totally compassionate. They are all loving, they are all encompassing. When you encounter them, you'll feel love emitting, right? There will not be any malice emitting from them. They're totally benevolent. They will look after your needs. They will allow you to be and do what you are and what you want to do. They're not going to force themselves on you. So unless you ask, you're not going to get a proper answer. They'll attempt to look after you, but again, we learn maximum from our mistakes. So they are willing to let us make our mistakes also. if you understand what I mean. Okay, so when we want help, we need to ask for help. But what is the state of consciousness from which you are asking for help will also matter when we are going into these expanded states.
For this, we are humbly grateful. To contemplate any other possibility could lead to mental disaster. I don't think we could do anything about it, whatever our stance. A key point has surfaced, however. The sum of all my personal experience, that of our work in the laboratory, and the thousands of gateway experiments, indicates that all other intelligent species, either in the physical universe or in other energy systems, use a form of communication that is total and certainly nonverbal. When words are used in such communication with us, this is a tight, narrow banded tuning so that they can be understood at least in part.
So again, we keep repeating this. In the expanded states of consciousness, one thing is very, very clear: non-verbal communication, a sense of knowing, symbolism, these play a very, very important part. So when we are going into these expanded states, we need to learn, or we need to create our own language so that we can be understood and we can understand what is being communicated.
I cannot stress this too much. All other intelligent species use what we now call nonverbal communication. It is something far more than what we label body language, telepathy, remote viewing, and the often mystical or religious connotations so commonly applied to a tiny part of NVC. We say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. A color picture is worth 10,000 words. A moving color picture is worth 50,000 words, perhaps, and a talking movie picture is worth 1 lakh or more words in the transmission of information and or communication.
So again, the communication is at various levels, right? And it just happens. Anyone who has experienced the workshops will know that this actually happens. In fact, we've formed a group of online excursion participants, and yesterday only there was a post in that group where these people, this family, had wanted to look for an answer. So they all independently looked for an answer, and they were looking at what was the best website for a company, or what was the formatting and the logo that they were going to use for that website. And the people who were looking for their answer literally had no idea about what the person who was wanting the answer was talking about, and they got their answers and they drew it. I'll post it on the book reading group. One of them got the logo literally accurately. The other person actually saw the sky, which was the main picture on the website that they were proposing to make. Now that implies that yes, that was the right website page to start their thing. So the kind of communication, the kind of stuff that you can actually get from this when we are accessing the intelligence of these expanded states is pretty phenomenal. Now, where the answers come from is another question. But the more you tune into it, the more you associate with it, the better you will get at understanding that communication. You know, suppose I go to Germany. In the beginning, I'll be very, very this thing. Then slowly, I'll be able to pick up the language. Slowly, I'll be able to communicate. So the more you communicate in these expanded states, the better you get at the communication process.
NVC or nonverbal communication takes a quantum jump beyond a talking movie color picture. It is direct, instant experience and or immediate knowing transmitted from one intelligent energy system and received by another. The content can be only a 2-digit number. or the actual reliving of an event not a part of your own life patterns.
So that sense of knowing, okay, there is a concept called the rote. We've spoken about this before. It's a resonant, organized thought energy. So you get a rote, right? You get a packet of information, and now you need to unravel it. So that can happen. An instant sense of knowing, an instant sense of understanding, without any logic, how the communication comes, but you just know it, the gestalt you get. Okay. This is the hallmark of communication in these expanded states.
Why did we evolve along our particular path so differently from the rest? I like the explanation which attributes it to the very rare characteristic of the Earth environment. We could see the sun and moon, planets, and stars. This presumes that most life generating and sustaining planets have thick cloud covers that blot out all of these. Their suns visually are no more than a haze of light, no more, nothing but blackness at night. Our species, able to see the physical universe from the beginning, took the route of astronomy, gravity, electromagnetics, particle theory, quantum mechanics, etc., which we call our sciences. Lacking this clue of a physical, physical universe, other species learned NVC.
So we have really engaged the physical environment, right? We have really associated with the physical requirement. But when we are going into these expanded states, physicality is not important. The state of being, the sense of being is more important.
If I were proficient at NVC, which I am not, and you asked me what was the matter because you detected unconsciously by NVC that I had a problem, I would be able to transmit into your sensory system how it felt to have the sore big toe that I had. You would momentarily have a sore toe, just as I had, still understanding that it was my big toe that hurt, not yours. Thus, you would know far better than by any means of any possible words that I could say what I was experiencing or feeling or wanted to communicate.
So, so there is a sense of oneness, right? A sense of total knowing, experiencing the experience. Now that can give you the kind of knowing that any kind of explaining will never do. So there's a merging which starts to take place. That oneness starts to come into play when we are in these expanded states.
Instead of my wife calling by phone to say that she would be late for dinner and that she would arrive at 9 o'clock, I would get a picture in my head of her driving the car with the headlights on, with the number 9 flashing simultaneously in this picture. She would also show me a picture of the right rear tire of the car, flat and being changed by a local state trooper. All of this could be transmitted superimposed with a signal of warmth and love in the space of perhaps 2 or 3 seconds, no more.
So telepathic communication. You are in connection with the other person, right? And you can transmit what you want to the other person. As I mentioned this before, we really experience this in the Lifeline program, where each one of us has a unique ID. So if I want to transmit something to a person, I can just imagine that person and send the message. Now it is all dependent on the transmitter and the receiver. Our brains are constantly transmitting data and constantly receiving data. The trick over here is to start becoming consciously aware of what you are receiving and what you are transmitting. If two people can become aware, then they can have telepathic communication. They don't need telephone. They will know instantly what needs to be known.
If I were proficient at NVC and my son also was trained in the technique, I could pass along to him in very short order all of the education and experience that I have gathered that he might desire or that might be of use to him. It would not be the absorption of words simply received in serial form, but an instantaneous, or nearly so, transmission absorption of the entire event, including my emotional reaction, what my five senses perceived, and the interpretations and conclusions that I gleaned from the experience.
So in the movie Matrix, these people, they are caught on top of a building and there's a helicopter which is standing there. Now, none of them know how to drive a helicopter. I mean, fly a helicopter, right? But they call Tank, who's the guy who's the controller in their ship. And she tells him that this is the helicopter. Upload the program to for me to be able to know how to fly the helicopter. And instantly that program is uploaded. And instantly she goes and she starts flying the helicopter. So that is the kind of stuff that can actually happen when we are going into these expanded states. Movies like Matrix, they are totally talking about what we are talking about here. And we are at some level, we are in the workshops, we are actually experiencing those things that they talk about in movies like Inception, Gravity, Interstellar, your that movie, Avatar, all these movies, what they are talking about, we are actually talking about and experiencing in the programs.
Take the starting point and draw any extrapolation from it. Then understand the limitations of our semi intelligent species. NVC implies a control of mental processes so alien to our present standards of being that I doubt that there is a single human or group of humans on our planet who have mastered the technique. If there are, they are very quiet about it. On the other hand, if it were the case, they certainly would have had to develop some type of mental shielding to survive the cacophony of unorganized thinking that is so common here.
So when you start knowing everything, then all the information coming in will drive you mad. Okay. So it becomes very important. Like today, our brains are actually receiving that information. But what is coming out to our conscious awareness is maybe a minuscule part of all the data that is coming in. So the brain rejects a lot of data. A simple experiment for this is, and we've talked about this again many times. Suppose there is a smell in a place that you go to. You will find after some time, you will not register the smell anymore. The reason for that is that the brain decides it's no longer important. So the brain is constantly sieving information that it, in its own intelligence or in its own dumbness, thinks it is not important for you to be consciously aware, right? Now, if you got to know each and every information, it's like your head would burst because we can't consciously process that kind of data.
Before man can communicate and associate with intelligent species at all levels of reality, he must become proficient at NVC. I am sure it must bemuse, if not amuse, other intelligent species when we spend millions for huge radio telescopes in the attempt to receive electromagnetic signals from other intelligent life sources. This is much like another culture measuring the exhaust gases from our cars or our pollution to perceive communication via this loose discharge of energy residue. At the other end, animals do most of their communication by sense and smell.
So when you see the radio, when you see the radio telescopes, etc., the information that we are garnering through the radio telescope may be 1,000 years old because that is the amount of time it takes for the light from that particular event going on somewhere deep in outer space to come here. But when we are going into NVC, it can happen instantaneously, right? There is no timeline. So he's saying over here that when a species who is proficient in NVC sees how much time, effort, and money we are spending on building these telescopes, they are bound to be laughing. Okay. And naturally, that if that data is 1,000 years old, then how is it important? It's, I mean, I don't know how important it is when the data is 1,000 years old.
It would be easy to give hundreds of illustrations of attempts to cope with the NVC problems. We have faced them in so many different ways that we are probably much more aware than the average group of Ford facility. We still grope with the rudiments of NVC type of training and mental processing. The only statement that we can make at this moment is that we recognize the existence and the need.
So NVC is something that we all actually need, right? We need that sense of knowing. We need that sense of understanding. I know for a fact that when I do biofield tuning, there is non-verbal communication going on between the client's energy field and the tuning fork. And via the tuning fork, I get a lot of information about what is happening with the client or what the client is experiencing and what are the steps the client needs to take to balance it out. The moment we start talking about it and it hits the nail on the head, the field, the energy in the field clears and the sound from the tuning fork changes. You get that? So when we are looking at this kind of communication, our sensitivity to the communication also becomes very important. Like over here, they also said that animals are actually more sensitive to non-verbal communication than humans because we have become, as a species, we become more left brain oriented than brain oriented. This communication that they are talking about here, it is more a right brain kind of an activity rather than a left brain because there's no logic to this communication.
From this segue, the material following goes interstate, an attempt to translate and transpose the NVC perspective into the written word. Due to such conversion, the question of validity always will be present. Some thought balls are easier to unravel serially than others. The time-space humanizing is bound to create distortions. It always has. You do the best you can.
So when he is mentioning thought balls here, this is the rote, resonant, organized thought energy, where you get a ball and then it takes time for you to unravel it.
Seven, surveys and schematics. The following is a deliberately free translation of non-verbal communication. To compound the rendering, most, if not all, represents the transposing of non-time, space events and ambience into replicas of conscious human physical experience. Thus, a humanizing process is used extensively in the retelling, which may increase comprehension and simultaneously reduce accuracy.
So when you are in an expanded state and you get this information, there is instant understanding. Okay. Now, if someone who has not experienced this experience in that non-verbal communication or in that expanded state, to bring it down into words and actually explain it will automatically cause some distortions and some inaccuracy. So keeping that in mind, we are going forward in this chapter.
To abet the method, a few specific words are utilized in a different context to provide a connotation not so totally unlike their common definition. You can't report he said or he walked or she smiled because it wasn't that way. The physical equipment wasn't available. Instead, here are parts of the replica vocabulary.
So the normal words will not work, right? So you have to develop another verbiage to be able to communicate what we are meaning in these communications.
Time space illusion, TSI, an anomaly among the standard energy systems, which includes the entire physical universe.
So time space illusion. So time and space is actually an illusion. Time doesn't exist and space doesn't exist, right? So he's saying time space illusion.
M band, part of energy spectrum commonly used for thought, not electromagnetic, electrical, magnetic, nucleonic, etc. M band noise is caused by uncontrolled thought.
So when I started meditating in the beginning, and I used to take a lot of flights, my best meditation experiences used to be in the aircraft. Okay. Now what happens? All of us are constantly thinking. And as soon as you have a thought, that thought is transmitted. It is going out into the ether. Now just imagine 7 billion people thinking all the time. Just imagine the kind of clutter, the kind of noise that is constantly existing in the around the earth. And what happens is that Robert Monroe called it the M band. So it's like a band around the earth where all these thoughts hit and then they bounce back. Okay. So here he's talking about the M band noise caused by uncontrolled thoughts. So anything that you think has been transmitted into the ethers and can be retrieved. There is a movie called Contact in which they actually retrieve from the ethers in the future speeches given by various people. Why? Because it is there in the ethers. You can catch it back. So nothing is ever lost.
Ident, mental name or address, that is energy pattern of item.
So each of us have an ident. Okay, each of us have an ID, and that is the indent. So suppose I'm indenting for Shrimangla, I will think of Shrimangla and I will get to her. So everyone has this unique ID. Okay, this is called indent.
Wrote, thought ball, a packet of thought mentation, total memory, knowledge, information, experience, history.
So I've already talked about this, the rote, right? Resonant, organized thought energy. It's a packet of information which is thrown to you and you need to catch it and then unravel it over a period of time.
Run the rote, to recall portions of rote after receipt of total.
So it's like a computer program, right? Now you've got the information. Now you can search and you can retrieve the kind of information that you want from that particular ball. So the information you've got it, now you can run it.
Percept, insight, intuition, understand.
So percept, it's basically getting to know about something. What is your understanding of that particular something is the percept.
Open, receptive.
So, in these expanded states, you can close like a chui mui. When you touch it, it closes, right? So you can be closed. That means you're not open to receiving. And you can be open. You're open to receiving.
Closed, tuned down or out, external stimuli. Flickered, uncertain.
So if in these expanded states, what you perceive the person many times is just a ball of light, right? Now, when that light is shining bright, that means the person is open to receiving, open to, and there is certainty over there. Now, if it is flickering or it is closed, then there's no light, there's darkness there, or it is flickering, cut, cut, cut. So then there is duvida, there is uncertainty. The percept is not very, very clear. So when the percept is not clear, there will be flickering, right? Because you don't have clarity over there.
Click. Instantaneous change in consciousness.
So in these expanded states, time and space does not exist. So if I want to go from one place to the other, I just have to think of that and I'm there. If I want to go and meet a person, I can just indent that person and boom, I'm with that person. If I want some information, literally speaking, I can click it and I will go to the place where I will get the information. So click is like a transporter. It will take you from one spot to the other, one stage of consciousness to another stage. It just moves like a click.
Blank. Don't understand.
So blank means a blankness, right? You that flickering or whatever, boom, it's like a stillness which comes. So you don't understand.
Turn in. Consider. Think over.
So of course this is clear.
Vibrate. Show emotion.
So if you're vibrating, what are you feeling? The frequency of your vibration can reflect what you are feeling.
Smooth. Get it together. In charge of self.
So smoothing means if there is the entropy is high, then there is no smoothness. So smoothing out means create more order in the disorder.
Dull. Lost interest.
So the light is shining bright, the light becomes dull. So the person is not interested in what you're communicating.
Lighted. Happy. Idea. Enthusiasm.
So if the light is shining bright, that means there is enthusiasm, there is acknowledgement, there is fun.
Rolled. Amused. Laughed.
So it's like, I was rolling in laughter. I was gurgandi khawing with laughter. We had this saying when we were young. So you laughed so much that you were rolling around. So over here also you'll start rolling around in laughter.
Pearl. Organized energy. Usually intelligent. Local slang.
So curl is a intelligence, right? So that intelligence is a smart aleck. You could say he's a smart aleck, and the guy knows stuff, right? So he is called a curl.
Plied. The way things are goes with the territory.
So this is what is.
One of the earliest discoveries made in the new mode of let somebody else do the driving was that I had more than one non-physical body.
Okay, over here. So in the beginning, what happened was in the first book of his experience, Robert Monroe was wanting to do the driving himself. So when he was going out of body, he was setting an intent. But later on, he got to understand that it's better to let that higher species or that higher intelligence do the driving. So he shifted from control to allowing, from control to trust. This is something that we read about even in the shift, where he talks about moving from ambition to meaning, from control to trust, from entitlement to humility, and from attachment to letting go. You get that? So when we are in these expanded states, the more we allow things to happen, the more we allow this intelligence to take us where we want to go or what we need to experience at that point in time, the better our experiences will become.
Upon return, I began to notice it took a small additional effort to get back into the physical. Initially, I assumed this to be nothing more than some minor misalignment as I tried to re-enter. On one particularly difficult attempt, I pulled back slightly, stopped trying, and examined the problem. My physical body appeared to be not one but two, much as when your vision is slightly impaired by astigmatism. They seemed very close together, no more than 3 or 4 inches apart, one slightly behind and fainter than the other. I approached the nearest of the two slowly, slid into it very easily. I held this position for several moments. It seemed as if I were partially interspersed with the physical, yet not quite in phase. The condition had a familiarity that took me all the way back to the vibration I first encountered and the physical paralysis that went with it. The sensation was near identical without the panic.
Okay. So, so what does this imply over here? So, when he started having many of these experiences, naturally now he's paying more attention. He's actually experiencing the experience in a more detailed manner. And then when you're going tremendously out and you start getting used to that particular state of consciousness, coming back over here at times can become a little difficult. Having said that, you will come back. There's no doubt in that. Okay. And then we also have various levels of our auras or our energy fields, right? So what he's experiencing here is the first layer. So you have the physical body and then you have another layer. Now, when he was going out of body in the first book, when he was talking about it, he talked about something called the vibrational state, where you have the physical body, and then suddenly the physical body starts to feel as if it's vibrating, right? Now, you're not physically vibrating. So, it's literally speaking the second body which is vibrating, and you feel that vibration as if your physical body is vibrating. So, that second body is what he's talking about here. Now, this body can be seen also. In the workshops, we actually make you see your aura, right? So he's talking about that layer, which is very close to the physical body.
From there, it was easy to re enter the physical with a simple twitch like movement, akin to a shrug of the shoulders. Thereafter, I began to take particular notice of physical re entry and found that I did indeed re enter a second form just prior to the physical body. In appearance, it was identical to the physical, only less dense. However, upon return, this second body appeared more real, the more solid of the two. Upon entering the second, the actual physical then seemed more definite. Also, I began to observe more closely my separation process, presuming that if the premise were valid, I would be able to perceive the release from this near second body. I found it was very real. I could stay in the second body, hovering near the physical, but could move no more than 10 or 15 feet away. It was reminiscent of my first limited out of body activities. It also brought back the memory of the many frustrative attempts in those early days to move away further, and the moment I found the release point. Without being aware of the reason, I had provided subsequently to others in training the key to such release, the sorry, the mental security repository box, where one can place thoughts that get in the way.
So, so again, he is developing the process, right? So when we do the program, the preparatory process has been structured very, very systematically. So you can see over here the things that would limit his getting out of body, he's getting them out of the way by putting it into the energy conversion box and shutting the heavy lid so that the experience that he wants to manifest can start to manifest. And many of you, I know, many of you have come back and told me that the one of the tools that you use the maximum from the excursion or the gateway voyage is the energy conversion box, which is a very, very powerful tool in itself.
Once I had become aware of the actual process, it became automatic, and both separation and return contained these elements, leaving the second body in orbit close to the physical, moving and being entirely apart and separate from the physical in a third body or an energy essence without form. I no longer concern myself with the details. Understanding it functionally, if not the reason, was enough for my purposes.
So as you practice, so practice becomes very, very important, right? So as you practice, you perfect the technique, and he started to get the technique into perfection. And learning these nuances, see, that is where the guru starts coming into play, because the guru has experienced things. So the guru can guide you. Okay, now you are reaching this state, now this is a trick that you can use. So the guru actually hastens your progress. Right over here, he never had any guru, technically speaking. So he did all the experiments himself, but then he put it down in the programs in such a beautiful structure that it's become very easy for all of us to actually experience what he's been experiencing.
Another early result of my new navigator, my total self, was remembering the going to class format. This came after my usual outer body separation process, releasing to such guidance and without much movement, finding myself among a crowd of grey forms. Crowd means so many, they seemed to fade into the distance. All were focused in one direction, and none seemed to notice my arrival, except one, brighter than the others. It approached me and stopped.
So now, once he handed over to his higher self to guide the experiences, he started finding himself going into classroom. So when he says the crowd over here, he's going out of body and he's attending a classroom in that expanded state of consciousness, and he finds a lot of people attending the same classroom. Now, one thing we have discussed previously, that all of us go out of body during the night when we go into delta sleep. So this crowd is basically all people like us who are going out of body unconsciously at night when we are having delta sleep to attend the classroom over there.
It opened with words. In my consciousness, glad you're back, Bob. You've missed quite a few sessions. I flickered. Well, I've been busy. The form focused. You're different. You haven't been on drugs or alcohol, have you? I opened wide. I've lost a lot of rote, or I can't pull it out. Where am I? The form rolled. I guess you have. You're back at sleeper's class.
So many times what happens when you take drugs and you take alcohol, your energy shifts. So this is what this guy is saying, that you are different, right? Now, Robert Monroe has been practicing certain things. So his energy has shifted, it has changed. So he says that you've shifted. Have you been taking drugs? And the other thing he says, the form rolled. That means the form started to laugh. And you're back at the sleepers class. So people who have gone into deep sleep and have come for the class. So you're in the sleepers class.
I turned inward and the percept came out bright and clear. Sleepers classes attended by countless humans during a portion of their deep sleep, during the sleeping out of body period. The only limitation was that such sleep could not be distorted by chemicals. It had to be natural. How many times I had been here long before I knew it, before I knew anything about OOBEs and the like. I just didn't remember when I woke up. Like everyone else, if anything leaked through, it was attributed to a dream, inspiration, idea, or imagination.
Okay, so all of us going all of us go into these states of consciousness, right? It is very, very clear that we all go there. Now, if you are having chemicals to go to sleep, like sleeping pills, drugs, alcohol, you will not go into this sleeper class. And a lot of information is transmuted to you in this sleeper class. So, the sleeper class is actually pretty important for our general well being and our general growth.
And I knew my instructor. Hi, Bill. Bill ruled. Took you long enough. Want me to plug you in? I flickered. Well, I don't know. You see, I think I am different. I'm not asleep. Bill blanked slightly, then lighted. Oh, you're one of those. How did that happen? I replied, I don't know. It just did. Bill turned inward, then opened. That means you don't belong here anymore. Too bad. You were one of my star pupils. I flickered. You're sure about that? About my not belonging? Bill smoothed. I've had them before. It doesn't work out. Your type gets impatient, bored. The biscuits, the OOBers, busy, busy, busy. I smoothed carefully. How about plugging me in one last time? As long as I'm here? Bill dulled. You probably know it already. Can't change the program. I opened wide. Try me. Bill flickered and tossed me a rote. I opened it easily.
So now you understand the nomenclature that was being used uh, in the beginning of this chapter, right? So what was happening? People who are going to sleep were attending this class. Now Bob used to attend this class on a regular basis. Now suddenly he has started being able to go out of body, and this guy understands that now he's an out of bodyer, so he's no longer eligible for this class. And then when Bob asks him that, let me get into it one more time, he throws him a rote, okay, to unravel it and understand. And then there's a click. So now he's gone. When he opens it, he's transported into something else.
I have a question, Nikitya, here.
Yeah.
So when we go into this sleepers class in our Delta sleep, which most
Yeah.
of us do, how do you know what we've learned? How do we get it back? Is it like when you're half asleep and you some thoughts are coming in your mind suddenly?
Yeah. So he says very clearly, na, over here in the last paragraph, he says very clearly, I just didn't remember when I woke up, like everyone else. If anything leaked through, it was attributed to a dream, inspiration, idea, or imagination.
Yeah.
So the point here becomes that the more we can connect, the more we can be aware while we are dreaming, the more connected with that expanded state we are. This is
Hmm.
where lucid dreaming comes into the picture.
Yes.
So we
Okay.
had talks by Luigi on lucid
Lucid
dreaming,
dreaming.
right?
Yeah.
I'm talking to them. They are going to create a one-day program for us. I'm talking to Alan and Luigi to
Uh-huh.
actually conduct a program for awareness on
Mhm.
lucid dreaming. It's going to be a one-day kind of a program. I'll be able to get it at a good price. Let's see what happens. But
Great.
the point here becomes that when we are lucid dreaming, it means that we are asleep, but
Hmm.
we know that we are asleep and we know that we are dreaming in the dream. So
Yes.
we have a lot of control in the dream.
Hmm.
You understand? So now that is one way of actually garnering information and bringing it back when we are going into that state of sleepers class or whatever.
Hmm.
Again, it's a nuance, right?
Okay.
Click. The anti ulcer, anxiety lowering, tension reduction, get it together formula. The major underlying cause of human worry relates to the law of change. All humans' conflict relates to this law. Some worry that change will take place, others that it will not. Wars are fought to resist change or to accelerate it.
So, so now what is the sleeper class all about? What are the people who are the sleepers learning in that class is now what is coming out. So the rote that was tossed to him is unraveling over here. Now, if you see, it's pretty profound what the statement which has been made, that all conflict is related to change. Some are resisting the change, some want to accelerate the change, and all conflict, all imbalances, all disharmony is caused simply because of this connotation. Now, if everyone in the world became equanimous or went into equanimity and there was no resistance left, then everything would work automatically. There would be no fighting, there would be no conflict because everyone would be in acceptance. Now, when we are looking at it from the Gita perspective, what would this reflect? That the person has become self-realized. There is no conflict left in that person anymore.
At the individual level, this translates into various forms of indecision. Fear enters into the pattern, fear of the consequences of any decision or action. The pressure builds up, intensifies as the decision is put off, delayed. The result accumulates toxins in all parts of the human system until there is failure or severe reduction in operating efficiency. Indecision is the killer.
So whenever there is restraint, whenever there's resistance to the change, fear will always come up. Okay, what will happen if it doesn't change? What will happen if it changes? And then when you're not clear, when there is no clarity of thought, indecisiveness creates more fear. And then it starts to get into a vicious cycle where it starts getting more and more toxic, and then problems start to erupt when it becomes unmanageable.
Consider the statistics of decision in general and simplified. In any abstract decision, there is a 50% probability that the correct or constructive choice will be made. If the correct path is taken, obviously no problems will exist. If the incorrect selection is made, it will become evident. When it does, there is a 50% probability that the choice can be reversed and the constructive path substituted in its place.
So it's very clear. You have always got a choice. You've always got a choice, right? To do it, not to do it. To be, not to be. To eat it, not to eat it. Always there's a choice. And it's like a flip of a coin. 50% chances you're right, 50% you're wrong. And then if you get to know that you're wrong, again, there is a 50% chance whether you will reverse it or you will not reverse it. So it's very, very simple. And whichever path you go, now the question over here comes, how do you understand what is right or wrong? And this is where the 4 S's come in beautifully, according to me. The grid, the resilience grid comes in very beautifully over here. So where are you operating? Where do you feel you are? What is your state of consciousness? The moment you start accessing these things, you will be able to take a proper decision very, very easily.
Therefore, there is only one chance in four, at the most, that an irrevocable direction may be taken in decision making. All vital decisions in the history of man have been made on much worse odds than 3 to 1. Some were as high as 1 in 20 and came out positively. To move away from the null point of indecision, take the position that any action or decision is better than none at all, based upon the odds of 3 to 1. To get the process underway without trauma, perform the following.
Okay, so now this, we are going to stop here because this is going to be very, very important. I think this is a gem in this book and it's very, very powerful technique that he mentions over here. Okay, so are there any questions? We'll stop over here today.